you please thank the host for this?
Absolutely. Our thanks and appreciation to Yohan and Rivka Maleh. Probably a little bit more Rivka than Yohan, but we'll assume for all intents and purposes that Yohan was somehow active in the planning and the procurement and the execution. But Yishar Kochachem, thank you so much for your hospitality and your generosity. So do help yourselves. The cheese grew on Israeli trees, which is really the miraculous thing about
the Shemitah year.
Before
the Shemitah.
So one quick word on this discussion, the topic of insects and worms, etc. Very appetizing, naturally. And we'll talk a little bit about
locust challenge.
Right, and how the locusts covered. Locust, cheese covered locusts.
How you doing?
Something worth looking into it. So we do have a biblical interdiction. It is sort of midoraita to consume worms or insects, moths of any kind. It's not. I'll have after. I don't think I can. Okay, too early. Yeah, because I can't talk and eat at the same time. Okay. So we do have to be careful about it. The question is only to what degree do we need to be careful about it, and how far do we need to go in order to look into things. So there is no mention, for example, in the Gemara of an obligation to sift flour. You may have seen this. That many people. That's probably a good plan anyway to sift flour. It really is sifting flour. You bake. So it doesn't say in the Gemara we have an obligation to do this. This is actually a comment made by Tirumat Hadeshin. So he was living in, I believe it was France, maybe Alsace, about 750 years ago.
That's amazing.
He writes that one should sift flour in order to make sure that it's free of worms and insects, etc. And the Maharal in Prague, he lived in Czechoslovakia about 550 years ago. He wrote that one should be very careful to sift flour, and he says explicitly, who in this particular region can say that he's free from this sin? Meaning, who can say in Europe, given the difficulties of storing flour, how hard it was to find, that the flour hasn't been infested, with worms, etc. So clearly we have an obligation to take a certain degree of precaution. The question is only how much. So, if someone were to come and tell me, Rabbi, I have a great idea. Here's an insect. I think you're going to like it. Obviously, I don't have the halachic right to go ahead and consume insects or worms or flying insects or crawling insects. The question is only what's the degree of certainty that there are insects in a particular food item or processed food. So we have a halachic distinction that we make between what's called mi'ut matzui or mi'ut sheno matzui. So mi'ut in Hebrew, rov is a majority, mi'ut is a minority. There's what's called a mi'ut matzui. It's a common minority, in other words, a minority that's not so uncommonly encountered or so infrequent. And there's a mi'ut sheno matzui. There's a minority that's not so common. And the halachic distinctions tend to center around that discussion. If there are fruits or vegetables that generally do not have insects in them, we may not have as strict an obligation to open them up and inspect them as we might if there were items that we know for a fact tend to be more problematic. So more along the lines of the problematic are leafy greens. It is very common that you buy lettuce or cabbage or anything in those families, and you find that between the leaves there's some kind of insect, some kind of an ant, some kind of a spider, some kind of a worm. Good advice would be to check these things. That having been said, it's not to say that one who doesn't check his or her fruits or vegetables or leaves is by definition a sinner. Unless you knew for a fact that there was a fruit or that there was an insect in there, you can't necessarily be said to have violated an avirah. It's just that good practice would be to look through these things. Incidentally, and I point this out because I always point these things out, there is no half-decent chef on the planet that doesn't wash his or her lettuce on both sides before serving it. There's no bigger humiliation to a chef than to have sand or dirt not to mention insects in any of these leaves, so it's not like it's a super uncommon thing to do. There are certain things that we can kind of use to our advantage. One of them is fruits or vegetables that are generally closed or encased somehow. So if I have, a good example would be a tomato. If I can pick up a tomato and in half a second basically tell you that the outside of the tomato hasn't been compromised, there's no reason to believe that there's an insect or anything else inside it, so there's no reason for me to do anything more drastic than that. There are fruits that happen to have natural cavities to them.
Right.
Classic example of this, I don't know if you're familiar with loquats. I don't know if you ever had them. Shesek, they call it in Hebrew. Yeah, these little...
Chestnut?
Shesek, yeah. Loquats.
They used to grow next door.
No, not
Shkedinia.
Shkedinia.
It doesn't
Not
have in
Shkedinia.
America.
No.
You don't have it in
Yeah, in Florida.
Florida.
They do have them in Florida.
You used to have loquats.
Shesek.
Loquats, yeah. It's kind of like...
Kumquat?
Not apricots.
yeah, it's kind of... Yeah, they're like apricots, but they're thinner,
Yeah,
longer.
Smaller.
It's
Yeah, longer.
Well,
Very tropical. In Israel, it used to be all over, especially in Bnei Brak, in every backyard used to be a tree of them.
yeah.
Oh, really?
And I, as a kid, I came from there, from Bnei
From
Brak.
Lebrak.
Yes. As a kid, nobody used to collect them, only me. I was sitting by that tree
eat them off the tree?
and stay there for 3 days and finish all of them. And I think about the Shuat, go to the Geffen and eat all the fruit and then can I go
My
outside.
in-laws happen to have 2 shesek trees in the front of their yard, so it's not
What's the name?
crazy. In Hebrew they call it shesek. In English they call them loquats. Loquats.
And it has to peel on
And
it?
in French?
What?
I don't
No,
know.
no, no.
I've
The
never
peel-
seen them in France.
You eat it. You eat
It's
it.
like,
I don't
it's
It's very. It's like
Loquat is not very English, so I don't know what language it's from. But at any rate, it's a. Well, you found it.
No, because she said the name in Italian, I said, I'm not sure if it's that.
They
Yes.
have it. What are they called in Italian?
Nespole.
Ah, the nespole.
Italian is Nespole.
And they eat them?
Yes, we have it. We have it common.
Really?
Yeah, it's common in Italy to find them.
Les nefs, les
Ah, les nefs, oui.
nefs.
C'est bon les nefs.
And how do you eat them?
You take out
It looks like an apricot, but it's like very
Yeah, nespole.
It looks like
there is a big.
It's the shape of a date, but it looks like an but it's like an apple.
And you take out the skin before you eat it.
I
think it's part of the
It's very common in Italy.
I never saw it before. Here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the nefs.
Anyway, so these things, if you well, actually, if I could borrow your phone for a second, I'll show you. If you look at the bottom, they have holes. That's the way they are. Where the flower recedes and begins to produce the fruit,
Yes.
it happens to have a hole that you can almost stick your little finger in.
That's what I was bugging.
So yeah, these really you can't really get away with being so innocent and saying I'm not going to open it up and check it because what are the chances of there being something in there? Probably half of them have some kind of an insect inside them. Just a very natural cavity that's very easy for insects to get into. But normally speaking, anything that has an intact shell or some kind of a casing or a covering outside, banana is probably another good example. Never in my life have I seen an insect in a banana that had its a peel on it.
Never.
So this is your way of making sure that there are certain things you don't necessarily need to look into. Carrots the same way, as long as the outside is intact.
So,
not a big deal, yeah.
isn't the bug? Doesn't it to make a tray has to be the size of a zayat, right?
No, it doesn't have to be. It could be as small as visible to the naked eye. That's the rule. So it could be a tiny little insect,
Yeah,
as long as you can see
I
it.
was wondering about those microbes.
Les pliés de Japon. The Japon.
What about the strawberry story?
What do they call them here in New York? There was a whole scandal about this. Copepods, yeah.
Yeah, you
Copepods.
can see it with the naked eye, but they are everywhere.
Yes.
Even if you hold them up to the sun, they look like little specks of dust. Like you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
barely make them out.
Bivas.
So,
Bivas in French.
That's what you see in Bnei Brak.
yeah, so
Yeah, but then how did it
Yes.
come
They call
to
them
the
in Hebrew
idea?
cardio.
I don't know, these little alien insects. Yeah,
B-I-B-A-C.
I never heard of
Yeah,
that.
They do
you can see it.
They don't eat vegetables. They don't eat vegetables because of that.
Never heard of it.
Just to relieve themselves. They don't eat vegetables and they don't eat kind of fruit at all. They eat bananas and oranges and apples, but they don't eat the other things.
So, well, they eat things that are
Make
easy to
their
check.
easy life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that are easy to check. That's the way they typically
But
do it.
when
So,
I grew up, I do remember for lettuce, used to have only Passover, But they used to wash it in salty water, the water with lime juice inside, for hours and hours until you put it in your mouth.
Even the microbiome are enough.
Yeah, it's
Even the microbiome. So the long story short is that the leafy greens, the halachic tendency tends to be that you should be careful about checking them because it's pretty bad that you find insects on them. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, there are varying degrees what we call midat hasidut. Nice, you want to be pious, you want to take the extra special step. You can look into them. Things that I think are definitely worth giving a once over are dried packaged things like almost like garbanzo beans, or pretty much any dried packaged beans or grains. If you even just shake the bag, you can see a little bit of dust at the bottom. It's a good sign that something has been eating there.
Here you will be
Where?
just know that you will be
Oh,
you will be recorded.
oh, I see. Oh, I see. So maybe I'll go somewhere. I can see them on sofa. I can see them on sofa.
I'm going to move there.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, il connaît.
Hi.
Vous avez vu comment tu nous gardes de l'espace?
J'apprécie beaucoup. So, dried and packaged foods, there's actually two interesting aspects to this. One is that foods that have been packaged very often do develop some kind of an infestation. So you'll see, if you buy, for example, dried garbanzo beans or dried red kidney beans or white beans, rice, very often, if you look at the bottom of the package, you can see sometimes like dust,
Yes.
which is a good indication that something's been eating at it. And there's a little bit of, that's right, buy a fresher bag. At the same time, and here's a very interesting halachic concept, any insects, right, any worms, any bugs, any flying insects that never actually touched the ground or anything attached to the ground are not considered forbidden by the Torah. It's a very interesting idea for a business. If you'd like to sell kosher worms or kosher insects, if you happen to have, for example, this is clear, the Shulchan Aruch talks about this, if I take a jar of dates, and I check these dates, there are no insects on them, right? Maybe there are eggs. I leave the dates inside a jar, and all of a sudden they start to develop worms. So these worms are not forbidden by the Torah. Why? Because the Torah says, "Remes haromes al haaretz," any of these animals that crawl on the ground, on the earth, and it's to the exclusion of those that never touch the ground.
Yes.
So if I happen to know for a fact that I packed rice without any insects in it, and then through whatever eggs or whatever other process, somehow there are insects in it that never actually touch the ground, technically they probably aren't even forbidden for consumption. No, I'm talking about even if it's midrabanan, it's only because it might fall into the category of what's called
I have a question.
not to do or eat anything disgusting, which most certainly includes things like frogs and snails.
Depends for who.
No, I think it's disgusting by a pretty universal.
You go to China, Rabbi.
I think some of the food they serve on airplanes is probably the same category.
Rabbi, if I want to make French cuisine gourmet snails kosher, I could use that trick?
Well, in theory, if you were to take fruits or vegetables that you know that they would eat, and you were to grow them in a jar in such a way that they couldn't,
It could be a large jar.
right, as long as you knew for a fact that they had never actually touched the ground or anything like a tree or a table, like they're in a separate container, they might very well be considered halachically permissible to eat, were it not for the fact that there are certain things that are just disgusting and we shouldn't eat them, period. Meaning, even if it's permissible, the Ben Ish Chai writes, this is what's called don't disgust your souls by doing things that are immoral or reprehensible or disgusting. And there's a biblical interdiction not to do this.
So are you giving me ashgacha or not if I start my project?
Well, the question would be, do I have to check the dates that you grew in a jar during this hydroponic escargot experiment?
Okay.
So if I'm eating them on purpose, maybe I'm guilty about shaksut nafshotechem. If I happen to eat them by accident, so accidents happen. What are you going to do? It's like
Just along
I wouldn't be required to check them if you kept them in a jar for at least 12 months. I guess would be the.
But for locust, for example, like we said there was kosher locust, and it could be. I mean, it could be as disgusting. First, it could be as disgusting as it would be for something else, but we're not forbidding them first. And
The
second,
Torah
honestly,
permits it.
I agree it's disgusting, but like you go to China, honestly, people they eat everything. They eat everything. There is.
Wow. Goa is Chinese for dog.
There is. So I mean,
No
I agree,
cat,
it's
though. They
really
don't eat
disgusting. Is it what? They eat everything.
Cats?
There is no cat. I was living in Hong Kong. I never saw one cat in my life.
They ate them all.
Where's
That's
the
what
cats?
happened.
Yeah.
They're extinct.
That's true, but like, so I agree. Lotte shaketsu, I mean, don't disgust yourself. I mean, if you're not disgusted by that, I mean, don't worry, I'm disgusted by that, Rabbi.
Okay.
But let's assume that some people are not disgusted by that. So, in theory, they wouldn't be going against any kind of issue.
Right, so the application of Atashachsu et Nafshotechem tends to apply to things that are somewhat universally disgusting.
It's not to.
In other words, right, just like I wouldn't put the Chinese on the Human Rights Commission, Muammar Gaddafi, yes, but the Chinese for some reason didn't make it the Human Rights Commission. I don't know that the Chinese, or for that matter, Lieutenant Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, would be sitting on my, disgusting item declaration.
Okay, so it's not subjective.
I guess it's universal to what most of the civilized world considers to be.
Even if for you it's not disgusting at all,
I have
Well, so
another.
the halachic question would be: Are you guilty of if you eat, for example, a camel? So you're guilty of violating the Torah interdiction of don't eat camels. It's not necessarily a disgusting thing; it's just something you're not supposed to do.
Okay.
Do these interdictions apply in pairs? So, for example, the Torah says you can't eat snakes. You went ahead and you ate one, and it's disgusting to most of the people in the civilized world. So you might be guilty of two different interdictions. One of them more severe than the other.
I had a notion, I had an idea. Why we were restricted to eat only certain kind of animals, not other? Because there's a global balance. So if humans will start eat everything, they will consume everything. So if you restrain yourself to different type of species, then you encourage their produce, but you leave the ecology to itself. So
Most of the mammals that we eat are pretty helpless. They're not predators, for example.
yeah.
But
They're not
most of
they don't
so
danger us, but
for whatever reason, we don't eat any of the predatory birds or the predatory mammals.
yeah, because
They're
they keep
off
the balance of the ecological. And I think that whatever the Torah.
I mean, the technical
has-
reason is because they don't walk on toes; they walk on a foot. Or in the case of the birds, they're off doors.
Yeah, but if you think about it in more human.
Just for Jews, huh? Jews
smart
it's
in
1%.
point of view of keeping the balance ecological, then
I hear that.
if you-
So my response would be that if I happen to breed 1,000 tigers in captivity, and it's more tigers than my state can support, they should be permitted for me to consume, and they still remain forbidden.
do you
So,
have the orchid, but in this is applied in reality?
so no, halakhically speaking, it's what's a surah is a
So you
surah,
see,
what's
whatever
a
not
surah.
applied in reality, then it means the halakha is right, because in a way it's just
I mean,
It's
they do raise.
applied.
Just so you know, they do raise in large quantities. They raise lions in Africa for hunting. They raise minks in New York State for their skin, or for the fur. So just because there's a lot of them doesn't mean that. Then you would say maybe it makes more sense to control the population if they're out of control.
well, I mean, humans do break the balances, and we can see it. But the Torah, I think that is trying to, without people, even when they restricted to eat the halavim. Now we know that there is health issues. I mean, if you eat them, you
But it's not forbidden to eat shuman.
But the חלבים was
חלב is
היו על
the-
המזבח תמיד.
But even if I slaughter an animal in my backyard, it's not going to the mizbeach. It's going
But
on
you
the
never
mizbeach.
eat it.
But you never
Because
eat
the
it.
Torah.
So I don't eat halal because they used to sacrifice it on the mizbeach, but there's plenty of shuman mutar. There's plenty of fat that I can eat from the permissible part. That's not.
Not so much because
I
it's
do
only
this for a
the
living.
front. It's only the front of the.
the
So the
exactly how
front
much
is not
you
much shubanim.
I eat the back. Sfaradim we take it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're interesting points, but at the end of the day, what the Torah describes as asur is asur.
I think the Torah trying to protect you from what it's good for you or not good for you. But at the end of the day, we don't know that.
There is no interdiction to eat lots of cheese and get rid of fat.
There's no cheese in the Torah except in Avraham. In Avraham אבינו שלקח את
Yoel
מלכים.
Biyov has an expression that
אוקיי, אברהם ואיוב, ביטול אברהם ואיוב היה המון דברים.
not so pashut,
Rabbi, I have a
So
question.
just, so yeah,
And my question
One
is, let's say you're talking and a bug flies through your throat and gets down your esophagus. Now you have to swallow it. You can't cough it up. You're giving a discussion. You know, is that kosher?
if you didn't eat it the way people normally eat things, then it's probably not.
Because that actually
You
happened.
inhaled it, that's maybe a little bit
What
different.
happened when I was on my birthright trip? The rabbi there, excuse me, was giving a speech about the holy land. All of a sudden, and so went down his throat. He was like, no, it just went down. You know. It's like-
So no, it only means forbidden if you were eating it the way people normally consume it.
במסכת ברכות זה לא כתוב שצריך לברך על זה או לספר את זה, כאילו.
We did it. Anyhow, more to the point of the Seder to BiShevat. There's the Zohar Kadosh has a couple of fascinating insights on fruits and vegetables. One of them is that you'll notice that although most fruits and trees and vegetables, the things that we consume, they have a kind of similar anatomy to them. They all have roots, they all have some kind of stem, they all have leaves, and they all have flowers. We consume very different parts of different species. In other words, for example, the cauliflower and the broccoli, it's actually the flowers themselves that we eat. That's the most nutritious part of the plant. In the case of carrots, we're eating the roots. So we don't eat the roots of the apple tree, but we eat the roots of carrots, of potatoes, radishes, turnips, onions, garlic, etc. All bulbs or tubers out of which the roots grow. There are some species that we eat the leaves of. So it's not even so much the seeds or the flowers. So lettuce would be a good example of this. It's the leaf itself and not the roots that we consume. And in other cases, it's the seeds. So sometimes the seed itself is the point. Think of things like almonds and walnuts, where it's the seeds themselves are what we're looking to consume, even though they could be used to grow another whole specimen. In some cases, we exclude the seeds because they're not edible, and what we're eating is the fruit that grows outside of it. Scientifically speaking, when they say fruit, they just mean what grows outside, what the seeds grow inside. So, in the case of tomatoes, the seeds are innocuous, you can eat them. In the case of avocado, the seeds are certainly not. Very little that you can do with them, but that there are some fruits or vegetables that have a peel, and there are some that don't. It's one of the distinctions that Kabbalistic literature kind of focuses on, that all these different fruits and vegetables represent different things to us. They're all nutritious in different ways, but very specifically the anatomy of the plant itself has a great degree of relevance to us. So for example, the pomegranates, the seeds are really the only edible part. And grapes, nobody really eats the seeds. It's more the fruit around it that we're interested. I mean, you can. Right. Typically, people don't. We don't compare the flavor of one seed to another. It's more the grapes have their special place in cuisine, but there are fruits that you eat in their entirety with the seeds, like figs. So the fig, you could say, has none of it is actual waste product. Let's say there's nothing that you have to peel or remove. And then you have fruits that have seeds on the inside or the outside, think strawberries, native to New York and New Jersey, by the way. Strawberries, they're American fruits, where the seeds are on the outside, and that's actually the sweet part of the strawberry. It's just the red part on the outside. The inside isn't so sugary.
You like the sabra. I always tell people from the Middle East, sabra. Israelis say they're like a sabra. They're hard on the outside and sweet on the inside. When I tell other people from the Middle East, I say, "Have you ever heard that analogy?" My friends from other countries. And they go, "No, I've never heard that analogy," but it makes sense because they're always tough and rough, and then when you meet them, they're more kind.
Desert fruit, right? So we should eat Israelis. Is basically what
or
So we are very sweet from the inside.
No, but
being in America,
well, the fruits come in different packages.
we are
Basically.
sweet also from the
Yeah.
outside, so we are kind of.
The idea.
You're mush.
So there are peels that are edible and there are peels that aren't, which is another interesting point. Things, for example, like apples or pears, very few people actually peel them. You just assume to eat the outside of it. Oranges, they're somewhat inedible. You can cook them, but and then curiously enough, you have the case of the etrog, which actually the Yemenite etrog anyway, the original one that wasn't mixed with any lemon, has no mean, the peel is the fruit itself. It has there's no flesh to the thing. It's only the ones they mixed with the lemons that actually have a little bit of meat to them, so to speak. But the etrog is unique in that way, so it's not such a shock that it should appear in the 4 species that we use on Sukkot. But yeah, this is one of the distinctions that we typically use, and we at least the more Kabbalistically inclined make reference to these things when it comes to BiShevat. We try to eat a little bit from these different fruits and maybe reflect a little bit upon their different natures, their different anatomies. So, yeah, if we get the fruit tray for them. Oh, we can take out. I guess we can take out the fruits.
Yeah.
Like, good? Ah, bien sûr.
What's the Rabbanit?
Tired.
The back.
Oh, my mother-in-law, Baruch Hashem, she's doing better.
Yeah,
She's doing
the
better.
back.
She had no.
That was her son.
That's my mother. My mother-in-law. Yeah, my mother-in-law is.
Yeah, I know. She had the heart.
She had bypass surgery this past out of ShaBa. Yeah, they tried an angioplasty.
She had an attack first. So they actually gave her a...
Rabbi, what's going to be the beginning?
Really, we should. Not necessarily. The order would just be from the Shirat Haminim first, and then we move on. We already ate.
There's one over there.
Okay, so that's what we do first.
Pass it down when you're done. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Coca?
So what do you do?
Sorry?
What kind of work do you do? Bank?
I work in finance.
Finance, bank. We're at...
Soggen.
Which one?
Soggen.
Maybe we should have passed.
Société Générale. The French bank.
Society.
Yeah, so these are like the 7.
Yeah, that's why we're
Is the French bank.
Bank.
And you?
So help yourselves.
Epidemiologist. Where'd you go to?
Okay, guys, serve yourself one of each and then pass it around.
Well,
What is that?
say tea. Olives.
What is that?
Shaked. Got
That's for what? That's for with the plates?
Yeah, so that if you need to take like, put one in the...
Manuela.
Yes, yes.
Moi j'ai un... Moi j'ai chocolat ou non? Je veux venir avec...
Saying perfect.
Il a un peu la tendance...
Ah, c'est la
En fait, c'est le Et en fait, tu vois des boîtes de courriel, il y a trop jeune, il y a toujours des
שקט אותם אותיות
לשקוד על משהו זה
להתקדש.
לשקוד על משהו.
Can you pass me one?
Je me balade de endroit en endroit, tu vois.
הכוונה, בהקשר של זריזות, כמו ששקד פה, אז נבואה של יחזקאל, רואה מקל שקד, אמור להבין מה הכוונה, אז הוא אומר ששקד השם על דבר, כמו שהשקד לוקח, שהגלות זה מלחמה, שהנבואה שהוא עכשיו הולך לקבל, תתבצע. יפה, so guys, please do pass around the...
If you want me to get rid of the plates.
Wow, it's so nice. Thank you.
Yes. So there's an order in which we.
Do you mean as a plate for the grapes and then we're done?
There's an order in which we recite these barachot. We already made a bracha on hamotzi. We're not going to make a bracha on the mezuzah. There's an interesting discussion if we would or would not. But we tend to favor the opinion that we don't. When it comes to the 7 species with which the land of Israel was blessed, there's the pasuk that reads Eretz Chita u'Sorah. So barley and wheat, or wheat and barley more accurately. Utena v'gefim v'rimon eretz shemen udvash. So we hold whatever's closest to Eretz gets recited, gets a bracha first. So when it comes to wheat and barley, they come first, and in that order. Then it's olives and dates.
Thanks.
And the figs, grapes, and pomegranates afterwards. Incidentally, there's a very interesting explanation as to why this is the case. But if you follow the story of the Meraglim, we're going to read it in another couple of months. The 3 species that they brought back with them were the 3 that we recite the bracha over last. In other words, the ones that remind us of Chet Meraglim. That's basically the te'ena, the gefen, and the rimon. Pomegranate, figs, and grapes are the ones that kind of are relegated to the end of the line. Interesting little.
Which one is the box?
Drashik.
Carobs,
Carobs.
we don't have.
Carobs would be 8, but yeah, right. But it's not one of the 7 species that with which the land was blessed. No. So it would not be the case. But yes, by all means. By the way, there are those who have the custom to make mezonot on cakes or cookies that are eaten at the end of a meal. If you've conclusively finished eating bread, Ben Ish Chai holds this way. But for the most part, most of the do not. But I was informed by David that the Madeleine cookies have both barley flour and wheat flour in them.
Wow.
Yes, we gained a little bit of both. Depending on your custom, if you make mezuzot or not during the meal. Some are good or some are not.
J'ai pas compris, comment on a fait le c'est compliqué de...
Ça dépend, d'après le Ben Ish Chai, tu cites mezuzot. Donc tu es décidé pour terminer dès que tu manges plus de temps. Tu as le droit d'après le Ben Ish Chai, pour le Kaliao qui le suit, de citer les mezuzot sur ce que tu veux.
C'est-à-dire que j'ai pas besoin de faire moitié. J'ai besoin de faire moitié.
T'as fait moitié, t'as mangé pizza, ça y est. Dès que tu décides de faire le but, tu peux faire le tu as le droit de citer les mezuzot. D'après le Ben Ish Chai. Après je prends l'eau, t'en fais le bracha, là tout le monde s'en bracha.
Thank you. Coincidentally, some you're meeting today with next week. Can Jay and I join you?
No. I mean, you can decide. It's up to you.
We meet. We can meet with us another time.
Incidentally, one of the opinions regarding Etzadat Tovara, there are a number of opinions, but one of them is that the tree of knowledge of good and bad, that's referring to wheat, to chita. Interestingly enough, chita, there's some kind of relationship there.
What is it?
Chita.
Which one's chita?
Chita is wheat.
A wheat and a cake? So a sin, a sin and wheat?
According
like
to
a cake, like a sin?
As if to say that there's like a relationship, naturally a
With
relationship.
wheat and a cake?
It's only one opinion.
I never knew that.
There were no apples then, so that's clear. The apples are like
Oh, that's right, not
the
the
Caucasus
apples.
Mountains.
So chita and cake, the same shorish.
Don't you believe me?
No, but see what's the mahakesha? Mahakesha beinehem.
You can get another one.
Ben Adam. Velo tapuach began.
It's not a tapur.
It's made from nature, but chita also made from
So תפוח in the Tanakh means etrog. They didn't have תפוחים in Tanakh. Yeah. So,
but you know what? Tefach also mean because
You said
that's the question.
it means in the modern the sweet apples are the tapuach referred to in the Tanakh. Where we see tapuach is etrog.
the tabach.
So where do you work for Pfizer? Where do you work for Pfizer?
That's why it's called הפרי בעצמו נפוח, אתרוג, כאילו הוא ריק.
כן.
Anyhow, if there happens to be a particular member of the 5 fruit species that the land of Israel is blessed with, you can make a bracha on this if you happen not to like the rest of them, but in the event that you're a little bit more easier to please, culinarily speaking. So feel free to start with grapes and with the olives or the dates. If you'd like to make a bracha, you wouldn't make a bracha on olives because they're generally considered part of a meal. People eat them during the course of a meal. If you would like to make a bracha, you can use the dates for the ha'etz because they're not typically consumed along with bread.
Long-term
Yes, if you have wine, you can make a bracha at any point during the meal.
It's not okay.
I didn't know that. No, I thought it was actually done.
Yeah, do some.
Oh, there's a little bit. This would actually be the first bracha that you make because it goes before it precedes the. So, Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam, borei peri hagefin. Amen.
So,
Hagefin, yeah, I didn't know there was more wine left.
no, I'm talking about grapes.
Do you have
It precedes, yes.
So I have a question.
So how much seems
Vous voulez un geffen rap?
Non, j'ai pris.
Vous avez?
Je vends.
Not a fig, they will have a raisin.
Yeah.
Les raisins. Si, the fig, you have les raisins.
Rabbi, why do Sfarim say al hagefen, borei pri hagefen, Ashkenazim say
Gafen. It's just no. The question is if we punctuate our brachot and our tefillah the way it would be punctuated in the Torah, where if you have 2 segolos, one after the other. Normally we would, the first one becomes a kamatz in the middle of a pasuk, the atnah, or at the end of a pasuk. So Abid becomes Abid, Kesef becomes Kasef, Pesach becomes Pasach. So Geffen would be, it would be Gafen if we were reading psukim in the Torah, and if we don't consider our tefillah to be that way. So.
And same thing with Morid Geshem,
technically right. Lo alehem yehi hagashem. There's a pasuk of the Navi that those who don't come to Yerushalayim to celebrate Chag HaSukkot, the rains won't fall on them. So lo alehem yehi hagashem. Right. You read it. Yeah. So anyhow, feel free to make a. Yeah. Okay, I have to assume that the dates are from this year. I don't know that they would have stayed attached if they were from previous year, but I haven't had dates from this most current growing season.
They never see them on the vine.
No, I'm saying I would make shechianu on it only because these are the freshest dates I've had this.
I have jelly.
They never see them on the vine.
Jelly from?
Etrog
jelly. I didn't eat etrogim this year.
I saw them on the vine.
My mother-in-law, no, she sent me חבוש.
Yeah, וחבוש זה... אבל זה לא אתרוג.
No, that's חבוש.
אם יש אתרוג, בדרך כלל בסוף סוכות, שומרים על האתרוג לפעמים זה ריבה. לט"ו בשבט.
No.
חבוש. Queens.
Yeah.
Usually around September you can find them. But etrog from the from Sukkot, you do a jam for
but we right so
this evening.
By the way, if the etrog, we make a shechianu on it when we use it for the Rabba Minim.
So I have fruit de la passion.
Passion fruit. Okay. Fair enough. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna make
Whatever you want.
ha'etz on the dates. And probably I'll save the shechianu for something a little bit more certain. I guess we'll make it.
How many months
It's not a question of months, it's a question of seasons. If it's something that there's a season where it's kind of yeah, it has nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah.
If we add Grenade in Rosh Hashanah.
It just depends if the season ended and then started again.
What do you think for Grenade?
It's September. The season is September.
So it could be just stuff from the same season. With but the passion fruit is probably a good bet.
No, but you have to do it many times. I mean, if you have 5 new fruits, you do 5 times shechianu.
No, once for everything is fine.
Shechianu, you don't do it a few times if you have...
Yeah, if someone took it out and you didn't see it.
I didn't know that.
It's everything.
Someone make a puri ha'etz and tamam, Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz.
Amen.
Okay.
L'Oremun, it helps you to refrain if you speak in Russian and negative speech.
That must be
You may only speak things
yellow or the
from
orange
language,
days that you put them in the freezer
which,
for
like
like
the
over.
כן, אני קונה אותם. I buy them in
red,
September
like the pomegranate.
and I put them inside. Here in America, they are coming in August, end of August. I brought
Fresh dates.
the yellow dates. And I put them in the freezer
tastes like
for 2
apples.
weeks, and then that's that we eat. That's
Turn brown.
let me show you.
The inside turns brown.
He makes amazing things.
That's how. That's,
You know, he's a chauffeur.
yeah, but this is
He makes amazing
a
things.
meal for Rosh Hashanah. Dates, רימונים, כל שבעת המינים אנחנו אוכלים בראש השנה. לא אוכלים בשר ודגים בראש השנה, אוכלים פירות ולחם וגם. זה מה שאנחנו אוכלים בראש השנה.
C'était tard de mémoire. Non, c'est pour mémoire, c'est l'huile d'olive. Je vais te la grâce te dit, la fille, le père fait perdre la mémoire et la fille se lance.
אחד הראש השנה של הרב שמחה, היה ראש השנה שהוא היה
So eat this and then ask for a drink of...
הייתי בדירה מול הבית שהוא מוכר לפנדרי.
C'est goût de toute façon. Mais elles sont très très bonnes
ואנחנו היינו מול הדירה והוא כאילו שלח לנו
Dépêche-toi parce que je vais me rappeler bientôt.
ברכות שהוא עשה. וחלק מהברכות היו כל הדברים שאני שומר עליהם עד היום בראש השנה. הוא היה הדבר שלי אז עד היום אני שומר עליהם.
גנרתי גם לבן, אבל למדתי בהספר שלו, והרב מאוד חביב. By the way, if already we are on the topic of Adam Rishon, the figs are another opinion of the fruit from Etzadat, what it was that Adam and Hawa ate, at least its physical representation. And the proof for this in the Midrash is that as soon as they got caught and they were embarrassed, they sewed for themselves fig leaves. So to this day, we use in English, there's an expression of fig leaf. It means someone's trying to cover up for some kind of mistake or iniquity. The politicians do this 10 times a day. So this is the proof brought by the Midrash, according to the opinion that the what they ate and they weren't supposed to eat was actually a fig, but it is one of the other opinions regarding it. So there's a reference to it in the same context.
So, it's interesting because the French translation, it's une feuille de vigne, like a vine,
Like a grape leaf.
like a grape leaf.
So that's a mistake. I mean, it's a poor translation.
Probably.
In Italian, use the expression.
אפשר לשאול שאלה שמתחילים? אז עכשיו עשית ברכה זה על הכל או שעושים על כל?
העץ לא, ברכה אחת. כל מה שהוא ברק לעץ פטור.
David has that already.
What's your name? Oh, sorry.
זה עץ?
אז מה שמך?
וזה לא.
התאנה, נבדוק. כשהתאנה תראה,
שלום.
זה מפה, את מצטער שאתה מרדת, ככה אתה יכול לבדוק.
אני זוכר כילד רציתי לבית בני ברק, ואני חושב שהאבא שלי תמיד אמר, תאנה זה דבר מאוד לבדוק.
בית שכונה. המשפחה שלי ארנונה.
Okay. Because I was thinking that what kind of food do they speak at the 100 because maybe the rabbi is showing.
אנחנו אמריקאים. הם נולדו שם. הדוד שלי בא ב-31.
He is right. Il a raison. C'est mieux de pas dire que tu comprends pour...
באו המשפחה שלנו.
You speak very fast.
No, any language. Le rabbi is French. Je ferai un effort à l'avenir.
You know that I understand that 20 to 30% when you speak Italian.
And right now I became a
So next up on the list would be grapes and limonin, the pomegranate. Nothing too dramatic, but in the event that you enjoy grapes or pomegranates, that would be the next according to the order.
Okay, bracha?
No.
גם נראה לי מזכיר את הלהבה שבנר. חוץ מהחול, אין חול ושבת ושלום.
שמעון, אתה יודע שאתה שמעון,
כן.
אתה פגש את ההורים שלו, אתה זוכר?
את ההורים שלו. כן, נכון. בסוכה.
לא, בפורים.
בפורים.
איפה במוצאי שבת.
J'ai pris mon billet d'avion pour le mariage d'Armani là. J'ai réussi à me.
אבל גם אותו פגשנו
Avec le travail, j'ai réussi à me.
כן.
ופעם אחרת, בסוכה.
J'imagine, c'est vrai. Même moi j'étais à ça de pas y aller. C'est pas facile en février, Pessar c'est dans un mois.
כן, אז אנחנו נפגשנו בה.
I wore the
Tu vois des photos de moi en costume.
Déjà,
Je l'ai bien.
mais je veux dire, avec le haut de forme.
C'est sûr qu'il va le mettre.
Je vois trop. Que tu veux forme.
עכשיו אני נזכר.
Narman,
Non, genre.
s'il y a une personne au monde qui peut le
Il était en 3 pièces. Il avait 3 pièces. Il a acheté un 3 pièces aussi pour. Non, mais Cody, il rigole, mais genre en gros c'est 3 pièces avec le genre avec la mais bien porté, tu vois. 3 pièces épais, genre. Oui, c'est ça, c'est 3 pièces. Exactement.
נסענו לקפלן.
Bah, c'est-à-dire que 3 pièces, il aurait eu l'air un peu débile. À part si c'est la 3 pièces blanc, et encore.
West 84 City, you know.
Non, mais bon, après, c'est un mariage de Suisse. Donc, faut pas non plus. Non, elle est Créteil. Ouais.
Bah tant mieux.
Ça aurait pu être du 19e.
Elle aurait pu être de Sarcelles.
Et pourquoi Sarcelles,
19e et maintenant Sarcelles.
You want to move on to the next fruit street for free?
Oh, the next, yeah, sure.
Il faut commencer par le...
Here's what the rest of the salsa.
Can you pick the one with the apple jam?
Mais il faut pas.
One?
This is actually brought down by some of the poskim that they would use the etrogim from Sukkot, they would make a jam out of it and they would eat it on Tu B'Shvat.
Moroccans do that, right? The one that are like
That used for the mitzvah.
yes.
No, very often people take the biggest etrogim because usually they have some kind of defect. First of all, they're cheaper, and second of all, it's a lot more meat. The ones that we use for the bracha usually they're like small but more or less perfect. But no, there's a segula like this for childbirth, for an easy delivery. I know that Rav Kanievsky holds from this. Every year he makes out of his etrog he makes jam. He gives much just a little bit. Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, whatever you want. Alicia, elle a dit ça? Alicia, qui c'est ça? Alicia. Ils osent me dire que...
You are Italian? No. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Where are you
well,
from?
nobody's perfect, but we like him anyway.
We like the wrong side of the country. Where are you from?
He's one of the nice ones, you know.
Rome?
Yes.
Oh, right. We met you here. I was gonna say, it looks like the guy.
Comment on dit
Okay.
Comment on cite en fait comme source de halakha?
Il y a des choses comme ça.
I know.
When did you guys see each other?
On prend des.
Right now,
Et on suit et on prend fait la
Libya,
mais tous
okay.
les sujets sur lesquels on n'est pas d'accord, alors on dit que
He's
c'est.
also Libyan.
J'ai beaucoup de mal avec moi, j'arrive pas à me fixer une ligne de conduite en fait.
Écoute, ce sont des questions super compliquées. Il suffit que vous s'embarquez dans le
Is Italian different?
Yeah, he's from Turkey.
qu'il y a quand même
He's from Turkey and he's
des situations dans lesquelles tu as plus
his parents are from Libya. And the parents are from Libya.
Donc c'est possible que tu aies appris la
Is Italian similar to Rome?
halakha ou le mishnah ou le tanakh,
Brought your family to
dans
Rome.
Saint Tabac, mais
Libya to Rome.
qui est-ce qui s'appellera ton Rav mouvement?
Libya was an Italian
C'est une
colony.
question personnelle.
So when they expelled the Jews from Libya, they
מההלכות du Rav, הלכות תמיד דברים ברבות,
Jewish schools in Rome?
que tu sois obligé de racheter ton Rav par exemple, si c'est captif. Le cabot du coup tu peux attendre. Il s'agit d'un rave. Donc c'est soit le rave dont tu as appris la majorité de la Torah, soit le rave avec qui tu as un contact régulier. Plus régulier. Il y a des ravins qui sont pas forcément ton rave personnel.
Vous avez un rave
Moi je dirais oui, le prochain rave. D'accord. Il faut que je dise, j'avoue que c'est peut-être pas la majorité de ma Torah que j'ai appris. C'est plutôt l'âge Kafa. L'âge Kafa. La démarche.
Et il faut que
c'est lui qui m'a appris comment est-ce qu'on apprend la Torah. Parce qu'on regarde la Torah, qu'est-ce que veut dire la halakha? C'est qui en fait? Je connais pas. Vraiment, mais je ne parle pas. Il est assez caché. Il est aveugle.
Il est en Israël.
Il est aveugle. Il habite cœur couché.
Il enseigne où?
Il n'est pas très public. Il enseigne. C'est 70 ans. Mais il est bien.
Il enseigne où?
Il est cool pour un parti. Il a un petit entourage. Mais votre ici, voilà. Je ne vais jamais dire. Il n'a pas de site internet. Il n'a pas de parti politique.
On va étudier avec lui tant que. Si on était à la yeshiva,
mais dans la yeshiva, on est cours une fois pendant un an. Et puis on a dépassé le shiur. Il y avait un petit cercle. Il y avait peut-être une douzaine au début. Donc c'était pour moi le plus important, c'était la réponse sur la perspective. Si tu veux, tout à l'heure, j'ai appris des trucs. Il a mis en perspective.
Non, c'est plus important la perspective. La perspective, c'est plus important.
C'est peut-être le plus important. Donc, ce ne sont pas forcément les détails à l'Afrique qui sont importants. Lui, il faut avoir un certain niveau d'autorité, de connaissance pour pouvoir trancher la halakha. C'est pas forcément les mêmes halakha qui tranchent la halakha. On va suivre forcément les questions. Il y a des questions qui sont forcément pas à l'Afrique. Plutôt good questions. There are fruits that have edible seeds to them. So for example, if you were to eat the apricot and you break the outside of the seed and you eat the inside, you can make a shechanu on that, unless you made a bracha on the fruit itself and you're eating both.
So for example, if I'm eating
but I think I don't think the minhag is to say shechanu on them because I think they grow pretty much year round wherever you are. You can find them.
pistachio?
Pistachios, I just don't think we eat them fresh. Usually you eat them cured. So normally it's not so much a function of the season, it's like they're almost never from the same season they were collected.
There was no rule that if you haven't eaten something in the last 30 days,
it's a question of the availability, not of what you actually ate.
Oh really?
Yes. So if it's if you haven't eaten it the first time you're eating it, it's a question.
What is
So if it's the first time that you're eating it, then
il te dit sur ça, je l'ai pas un peu de ça. Super bon ça. Ça s'appelle mais fais passer la prochaine. Ah bon, j'ai pas besoin. Ok, je lui dis qu'on
So I'm going to make a shechianu on the passion fruit. I'm super excited to have a good one all year. And this shechianu, we can apply it to all the fruits and vegetables we haven't had since they came into season. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Incidentally, there's a big machloket about passion fruit as to whether or not it gets a borei pri adama or borei ha'etz. You familiar with this?
Like papaya.
Huh?
Like papaya.
So right, they usually in Israel.
Quantity that I have to eat.
No, you just taste it.
What's that?
No, just taste it.
That's I think the truth.
Oh, that's it.
C'est quoi ça?
I believe so.
My our cousin from
Tomatoes are very
Tomatoes are hadam. It grows on a ground crawling vine, which is, by the way, the same logic behind the passion fruit. It grows on a vine, but it'll trail on the ground and grow on the ground. So if it was considered a tree, then you couldn't eat from it for the first 3 years. And generally speaking, the fruit's not that sweet after 3 years. They typically replant them. Kind of like bananas, you basically plant them for a year or two, and then you cut them down and start again. We don't consider them trees. Yeah, that tends to be the tendency.
But avocados are borei pri ha'etz.
Avocado, yeah, it's an established tree. Yeah. Very tasty. It's one of the fattest fruits there is. Like lemon nuts, basically. Yeah.
So you solved the mystery. Fruit or vegetable?
Scientifically speaking, it's called a fruit. But culinarily speaking, it's called a vegetable.
Green sticker.
It's so adapted to the vegetable category of salad.
The pumpkin is also a fruit. Not any different.
זה בא
Flowers.
I take the screen.
You can take the flowers.
Edible flowers.
Flowers are edible.
I think peyote.
And they said it's a fruit or vegetable. It's actually a fruit.
So they reimbursed me.
Yeah.
But they like me
They
to
have
do
the
it.
same category.
They have salad that
So like a cheap
A flower is a fruit. It grows the same way as
Like so? Cheap
גדל חרוץ שם, כן.
You like roses?
Like put them in salad. Like salad. Flowers in salad.
So Rivka, this is
Salad has flowers.
You like
Petals.
like roses?
okay. So we probably equally deserve Shechiano. They make really good juice too. Lauren is very tasty.
There's more. There's more. I'm gonna pass it around.
Je pense que je vais faire dans la semaine, je vais faire les gosses, peut-être, je vais
Very tasty the etrog. Very, very edible, yeah.
Very edible. Best compliment for a food. It's edible.
Another temanim that eat the temani etrogim raw, it's just not very appetizing. Thank you. But they have the most appeal, the most edible.
Wow, so much Beaucoup de fruits.
Beaucoup de fruits.
Oui.
Trop
de fruits. Oui.
So this is the plate that has the fruits that have stones, yeah?
But
it's more difficult.
The ones that have hard seeds.
Non mais genre en fait vous en devez dire on va faire cette catégorie, vous êtes de toute façon on n'est pas 10 donc on va faire juste je vais essayer le comité.
Tu veux des birkotes?
Non j'ai.